The night before he died, a king sat on the floor of a palace and held his children for the last time. His daughter Elizabeth was 13. She was crying so hard she could barely speak, her hands clutching at him as if refusing to let the moment become real. His son Henry, just 8 years old, stood close, watching, trying to understand something no child ever should. Charles pulled Elizabeth closer. "Sweetheart," he said softly, his voice steady in a way that almost felt impossible, "you will forget this." She shook her head immediately, tears breaking through every word. "I shall never forget it whilst I live." He held her tighter for a moment, then gently pulled back, looking into her eyes as if trying to leave something behind that would last longer than memory. He told her not to grieve, that what was happening was not a defeat, but something greater, that his death, he believed, would stand for the laws of the land, for its liberties, for the true Protestant religion. He even told her what to read, the books that had shaped his own faith, as if preparing her not just to remember him, but to understand him. Then, he turned to Henry and lifted the boy onto his knee. "Sweetheart," he began, pausing for just a second. "Now they will cut off thy father's head." Henry stared at him, frozen. "Mark what I say," Charles continued. "They will cut off my head and perhaps make thee a king. But you must not be a king so long as your brothers Charles and James do live. I charge you, do not be made a king by them." The boy's face tightened, and through tears he answered with a kind of fierce, childish certainty, "I will be torn to pieces first." For a moment, Charles said nothing. He simply held him there. Then he stood, walked them to the door, and watched as they were taken away. He turned back once, then rushed forward again, pulling them into one last embrace before the soldiers separated them for good. When the door closed, the room fell silent. There was nothing left to do. The next morning, he would be executed. This is the story of how it came to that. London, January 30th, 1649. The city is frozen. Frost clings to the cobblestones. Ice gathers along the edges of the Thames. Every breath hangs in the air. And yet the streets are already filling. People have been arriving since before dawn, moving through the dark, climbing onto rooftops, pressing into windows, lining the route between St. James's Palace and Whitehall. Some have come from across the city, others from miles away. No one is quite sure what to feel, but no one wants to miss it. Inside St. James's Palace, Charles Stuart has slept for barely 4 hours. He wakes before dawn, rises slowly, and walks to the window. For a moment, he just stands there, looking out over the city he was born to rule, the city that fought a war against him and won. Then he turns back into the room. "I have great work to do today," he says quietly. He calls for his attendant, Thomas Herbert, and asks for something unusual. "Let me have a shirt on more than ordinary." Herbert hesitates, then nods. "It is bitterly cold," Charles explains. "He will be standing outside for a long time. And if the cold makes him shiver, some in the crowd might mistake it for fear. I would not have them think it proceeds from fear," he says calmly. "I fear not death." So he dresses carefully, deliberately, putting on 2 shirts. A small decision, but one that says everything. Before we walk out of that palace with him, there is something you need to understand. Charles believed completely and without hesitation in the divine right of kings, that his authority came from God alone, that no parliament, no court, no group of men had the right to judge him. To him, it was not arrogance, it was truth. But to Parliament, it was tyranny. England had already been splitting apart for years along lines of religion, power, and control. Charles's rule, his Catholic queen, his decision to govern without Parliament for 11 years, all of it had driven those divisions deeper. By 1642, the tension broke into war. A war that lasted 5 years. a war that killed around 200,000 people, the bloodiest conflict ever fought on English soil, and in the end, the king lost, captured, imprisoned, escaped, recaptured, until finally, in December 1648, something unprecedented happened. Soldiers stood at the doors of Parliament itself, turning members away. Only those willing to put the king on trial were allowed inside. What followed would change everything. What followed was something England had never seen before: a king on trial. The proceedings began on January 20th, 1649. Charles entered the courtroom dressed in black velvet, composed, deliberate, every detail of his appearance carefully chosen. A white lace collar rested against his chest, and hanging from it, the jeweled badge of the Order of the Garter. Even now, even here, he looked every part a king. He kept his hat on, a small act, but a deliberate one. In his world, authority flowed downward. A king did not remove his hat to subjects. When the court began, Charles did not answer their charges. Instead, he asked a question. "By what authority am I brought hither?" There was a pause. Then the court pressed on. Again, he interrupted. "I would know by what power I am called hither. I would know by what authority, I mean lawful authority." For 3 days, he repeated it, the same question, over and over again. Not out of defiance alone, but because, in a way, he was right. There was no precedent. No court in history had ever tried a reigning king. The authority, they claimed, did not exist in any traditional sense. But the men in that room were no longer operating within tradition. They were creating something new, and Charles knew exactly what that meant. "I am your king," he told them, "your lawful king. I have a trust committed to me by God, by old and lawful descent. I will not betray it to answer a new unlawful authority." He refused to plead. Without a plea, the trial could not proceed in any conventional way. So they changed the rules. On January 27th, the verdict was delivered. Guilty. Tyrant. Traitor. Murderer. Public enemy. He tried to speak. They silenced him. And just like that, the decision was made. A king would die. He was given 3 days. 3 days to prepare, to write letters, to pray, to think about what remained. And on the 29th, they brought his children to him one last time. The room. The floor. The embrace. The moment that would stay with them forever. Now it is the 30th. The morning has passed. The city is waiting. And at 10:00, the door opens. There is no carriage waiting for him, no shield, no protection from the eyes of the people. This too is deliberate. He will walk through St. James's Park, under guard, in full view of anyone who wishes to see. The distance is not far. Perhaps a mile, 15 minutes at most, but today it feels longer. Because every step matters. The park is lined with soldiers. Beyond them, the crowd presses forward, silent, watching. This is not the London people know. This is a city holding its breath. As he walks, there are those who remember seeing him here before, running across the grass with his children, measuring their height against a silver staff he kept for that purpose, calling to them, laughing, alive in a way no title could define. Now he walks the same ground alone, a king without a kingdom, a father without his children, but still, unmistakably, a king. Those who watched him later said the same thing. He looked composed, serene even. Whatever fear existed, if it existed at all, he did not show it. He reaches Whitehall. Inside, he is led through the Banqueting House. And here, above him, is something almost impossible to ignore. The ceiling, painted years earlier by Peter Paul Rubens, commissioned by Charles himself, a masterpiece of colour and light, stretching overhead in vast panels. It shows his father, King James, ascending to heaven. Carried by angels, surrounded by symbols of divine authority, it is a declaration painted in gold and movement that kings are chosen by God and answerable only to him. Charles walks beneath it slowly. This belief, this certainty, is what brought him here, and now it hangs above him as he moves toward his death. The irony is almost unbearable. He passes through the hall and steps out onto the scaffold. The crowd is immense. It stretches further than the eye can follow, held back by ranks of soldiers. This has never happened before. Not like this. Not a king. He looks out for a moment, taking it in. Then he begins to speak. "I shall be very little heard of anybody here," he says, his voice carrying only to those closest. "But I think it is my duty to clear myself as an honest man, a good king, and a good Christian." He tells them he did not begin the war. They began upon me. He speaks of order, of hierarchy, of the difference between ruler and subject. A subject and a sovereign are clean different things. And then, as he finishes, his voice steady to the end, "I go from a corruptible to an incorruptible crown where no disturbance can be." He turns to the executioner. The man's face is hidden, masked, unknown. No one wanted to be known as the man who killed a king. Charles asks a simple question. "Is my hair well?" It is not. So he reaches up, takes a white satin nightcap, and places it over his head himself. The executioner steps forward, gently tucking away the final strands. For a brief moment, the two stand close together. A strange, almost human moment. Then Charles kneels. The block is low. Lower than expected. He must lie flat. He places his head down, says his final prayers, and stretches out his arms. The signal. The axe falls. One clean strike. And then, from the crowd, a sound. Not a cheer, not a cry, something else. A deep, collective groan rising all at once, as if thousands of people had tried to speak and found no words. Something witnesses would remember for the rest of their lives, something that had never been heard before, and would never need to be heard again. People surge forward, desperate, reaching for the scaffold, pressing cloth and handkerchiefs toward the blood, believing it holds something sacred. The soldiers push them back. By nightfall, it is over. The scaffold is gone. The king is gone. And England is something else now. For the first time in its history, it is a republic. It will not last. 11 years later, the monarchy will return. But something has already changed, something that cannot be undone. A king stood trial. A verdict was given, and an idea was born. That power must answer, that even a king is not beyond reach. So what was he? A tyrant who brought it on himself, or a man of unshakable belief, destroyed by a world that had already moved on? What do you think?